Hello everybody, welcome to the Wonky Angle, where I talk about electronic music, both new and old. And today I'm talking about the second album from a guy called Gerald, Automanikk. Alright, so before I start, I should mention that a guy called Gerald, as influential and important as he is, unfortunately does not have all of his albums widely available to listen to everywhere. At the time of this video's upload, this particular project is not currently available for legal streaming. I've had to link an unofficial upload someone posted on YouTube instead. I'm guessing there's probably some, iffy music rights stuff going on behind the scenes for this one, given how it was released on a major label. And you know how major labels are. Though, the good news is that purchasing a physical copy should not be difficult. There's a whole bunch for sale on Discogs right now. So, yeah, if it does become available to legally stream, like on his Bandcamp page or somewhere else someday, then I will link that instead, but, yeah. Anyway, yes, this is Gerald's first and only project on a major label. After the runaway success of Voodoo Ray, he got picked up by Columbia Records, and released his well-anticipated follow-up to Hot Lemonade on it, even creating his own little imprint off of Columbia called Subscape, which was pretty much just created for this album and its related singles. And just right off the bat, the major label backing from this album does show, just in the way this project sounds in comparison to Hot Lemonade. The production is even more crisp and clean than his debut. These tracks have a little more density to them, and certainly more polish. That said, also, when it comes to the, actual creative direction, I would not at all be surprised if there was, a little bit of prodding from Columbia to just get Gerald to keep trying to recapture the success of his previous work and keep making stuff like Voodoo Ray. Automanikk is not nearly as inventive as his debut. It feels even more like a product of its time. Extremely early 90s deep house stuff all around. There's even more vocal guests, and the cleaner sound feels like an attempt to reach a wider audience as well. I'd even say it's also notably sameier listen than Hot Lemonade as well. That said, I would also not call this a sellout by any stretch. It's only a tiny bit more commercial than his debut. And, it was not behind the curve either. It came out in 1990 before the sound really became ubiquitous. I'd definitely say this entire project is perfectly enjoyable for what it is all the way through. And even if it is pretty dated, none of it comes off as cheesy or overly mainstream sounding. Perfectly solid dance record that I'd say still holds up now. There is just, a little bit of a whiff coming off of this one that feels like a typical second album from an otherwise one-hit wonder project. I don't have quite as much respect for this one as I do for his debut. I don't plan on deleting it off my iPod, though. But yeah, I may as well go individual tracks then. I will say the opener definitely should satisfy the qualms of people who thought Gerald was about to go more pop. To the Other Side is just this super straightforward deep house club banger. Dark bass lines, cowbells, rhythmically stuttered vocal snippets saying groovy, groovy vibe, as well as the voice of someone named Elaine saying the title and the word bounce. It's a ton of fun. Pulls you in immediately, sets the tone for the project pretty well too. And we get FX, that was also a single in its own right, most notable for its openly sampling I Got the Power! That is from Jocelyn Brown's Love's Gonna Get You, and of course the band Snap had a much bigger hit that same year using that same sample with their track The Power. I'm not sure which one actually came first. I'm guessing Gerald, but I could be wrong about that. Oh yeah, and this particular album version is subtitled Mayday Upgrade because it's a remix by Derek May himself under the name Mayday, with some help from Carl Craig as well, so that's cool. I mean, the track itself admittedly wasn't a major standout to me, but it is certainly as fun as anything else here. Oh, and as an aside, the single version of this remix has two B-sides worth noting, as they're both disses to 808 State for having left him off the credits of Pacific State, and Gerald not getting royalties from it despite having written it. There's a track called I Can't Wait No More, which samples an argument between him and the rest of the band over the phone, and another one called Specific Hate, which just reuses the same pad progression from Pacific State. and occasionally brings in a few whispered vocal snippets that if you listen closely enough say, "Where's your saxophone?" So those exist if you ever wanted to look them up and hear Gerald at his most pissed off. If you were ever wondering why he never attempted to work with 808 State again after Pacific State, I think those are a pretty good demonstration of why. But I digress, those aren't actually on this album, I just thought those would be interesting to bring up. Anyway, on the actual album, next up we got the title track. This is another deep house banger like the opener that kind of combines a bunch of different ideas from the other tracks. Got a whole bunch going on here. You got some airy synth pads taken out of his track Eyes of Sorrow, which appears later in this album. You got some process and pitch down vocal snippets saying the title and also the word bounce again. Lots of 808s and 909s, and even an uncredited vocal performance from who I believe is Viv Dixon. Lots of fun here too, one of my definite favorites from this thing. Though then we get a bunch of more sensual down-tempo tracks that focus on the vocal performances. You got Emotions Electric 2, which is of course a sequel to his 1989 single Emotions Electric. Though aside from the lyrics and melody being the same, they don't sound as similar as you'd think. And it's got this progression of synth pads that pretty heavily resemble those which would later be used on the Madonna track Justify My Love. Not similar enough to result in a lawsuit or anything, but yeah, there is some similarity there, and this is definitely way better. I guess this track does maybe run on a tad long at 7 minutes. There's not a ton of progression there either, but I didn't get sick of it. Still lots of nice vocal performances and airy atmosphere created here. I think this is still one of my favorites on here. And then Eyes of Sorrow, mentioned that. This is the Viv version, compared to the original single version on the B-side of his track FX, which did not have any vocals. This puts Viv Dixon on top, and I think is actually an improvement from the original as a result. But yeah, lots of airy atmosphere here too, and very much enjoy all the use of the flutes here as well. Also maybe a bit long at 7 minutes, and I think even has less progression than the previous track, though I weirdly didn't notice it as much here. It's still very solid stuff. We then get one more vocal track after that, I Feel Rhythm. It's got more energy and bounce than the previous two tracks, though it does start to feel maybe a little cliched at this point and doesn't stand out as much to me. And after that we return to instrumentals. We get Stella, co-written by Rohan Heath. I believe he handles the keyboards on here. And this one, while not sonically much different from anything else on the project, is certainly lots of fun. There's a lot of old school house piano solos in the first half, and even a full-on guitar solo in its second half, as well as a bunch of synth horns near the end too. It's one of the tracks on here that has the most progression. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention, this album has like a bunch of radio announcer vocal snippets that are placed between a few tracks here and there for some extra flavor. Most to say stuff like, "Welcome to the Pure Afro Sound," or "Goodbye and thanks," and aren't that interesting. Though the end of Stella is probably the weirdest example, with what sounds like a snippet of, like, Count Von Count's deeper voiced dumbass brother. 1, 2. Oh no, what come after 2? So that's a thing as well. Anyway, after a minute-long interlude called Blame the Artist, which has the vocals of two guys called Jerry and Terry, who are clearly just chatting in some room, and it doesn't sound that great or add much of interest. We then get the track Subscape, also known as Untitled, depending on which version you have. Though as far as I can tell, there's no actual difference between the two versions, just whether you have Subscape or Untitled, it's the same song. But yeah, this track, it kind of sounds like what he did with Pacific State. Watery pads, glittering sound effects, and plinky synth melodies. A lot of really nice chill atmosphere over a typically danceable 909-centric deep house groove. Obviously not as good as the actual Pacific 202, but certainly really enjoyable in all the same ways. And then we get to I Won't Give In, which is the closer on the vinyl version, and there's a kind of mediocre sounding male vocalist on here who's not credited. I have a feeling it might just be Gerald himself singing. I could be wrong about that. It's not bad, and it does make for a nice closer, though I wouldn't really call it a major favorite. That said, it's not the actual closer on the version I'm used to. There's instead one more track here called Voodoo Ray Americas. And it is just Voodoo Ray again, but stretched out to 7 minutes with a slightly different bass line and slightly cleaner production, and that's it. It's not completely out of place, but it doesn't feel as fitting a move to me as closing Hot Lemonade with Voodoo Ray. This feels more like a bonus track and a move from the label, like hedging their bets with this project and making sure that they have a failsafe in case the album flops. which it didn't, but not the most satisfying finish you could have had here either. But yeah, that's Automanikk. I may have my issues with it, and it is not as interesting or inventive as his debut. I tend to treat it more like 90s deep house background music more than anything, but I do certainly enjoy all of it for what it is. It is also slightly better produced than his debut, just a little bit, probably thanks to having a bit more of a budget. It's certainly not the most incredible stuff I've ever heard or the best possible work that Gerald is capable of, and not as good a hint at how forward-thinking he really was. He'd evolve into a lot of different sounds after this that did not resemble this project that much at all, and this is probably still Gerald at his most overtly commercial, but it's still plenty of fun. I can still see myself coming back to this if I'm in the mood for it, and there's definitely enough good stuff here to still definitely be worth giving a shot. So I think I'm overall feeling a 7.5 out of 10 on this. But of course, this is just my opinion. You can feel free to disagree with it, but I'd like to hear your thoughts, so leave the comments in the comment thing down there. Shout out to my Patreon supporters. They're awesome people. You want to add yourself to that list or make me review something, link to my Patreon is in the description. But yeah, that's pretty much it. That's all for today. See you next time.